Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
Joey, I would feel remiss if I didn't start off our podcast with a story about my family.
Oh, everybody looks forward to these every week, Russ. Trust me.
But the other day I caught wind of this. You can't tell my wife I told you this, right?
I'm not going to promise that.
You know we're going to Hawaii next month.
Yes.
And usually when we go to Hawaii, it's to visit her aunt and uncle who lived there, that have been there for like 50 years. Well, this time they're actually going to be gone on a vacation. By the way, who vacations?
Where do you go from there?
They're actually vacationing in other islands in Hawaii.
Okay.
It's funny. We're going to be in Hawaii for this conference, and her parents, who live right next door to us, are flying out the day before us to go to Hawaii to go on this vacation with them.
And y'all had no idea?
No, I had no idea.
Okay.
Either way, this is not like a common thing, right? That I don't want anybody to think that I'm the Hawaii guy, but we're going to Hawaii.
Hawaii 5-0? Could we call you that? The idea guy has gone flat. So I'm just, maybe Hawaii 5-0?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Like rolling in my 5.0?
No.
No, not that either?
Please continue.
Okay.
Sorry.
So her aunt, they live on this little canal right there on the edge of Honolulu off the island of Oahu. They're in their late 70s, early 80s. And they live on this little canal. And of course, they've got this lanai on the back porch that overlooks it. I've gone out there. I've even caught sharks off the back porch.
Nice.
Yeah, I caught a hammerhead one time. I mean, it's pretty cool. Like that was only like a 15-pounder or something, but it's pretty awesome. Well, the other day, her aunt had come downstairs from the bedroom and walks into the kitchen only to find a 25, 30-year-old standing butt naked, dripping wet,
Oh my God.
searching through the refrigerator.
Well, he's hungry. I mean, can you blame him?
Like
He just got done swimming a canal. I mean, what?
oh my goodness.
I'd be hungry too.
Yeah, like literally, because the back door is open. This random dude, who knows what sort of drugs or whatever he was on, swam in this canal, walks up the steps, walks into their back door, and just starts looking for food.
Wow.
And so she's like sitting there and stunned, is like, get out. Get out of here, right? I mean, you can only imagine what's going through her mind. Well, her husband comes into the room, and here he is. He's packing. He's ex-military, but now he's 80 years old. He's like this small Japanese guy. He's not very big. And from what I understand, this guy was a fairly bigger guy that's standing in there. And so this story goes on and on and on. Needless to say, they end up having to have the cops arrest this guy, put him down on the ground because he's not wanting to cooperate. He's not fighting with anybody, but he just doesn't want to leave.
He hadn't gotten enough food.
Now, as crazy as that story is, I don't know if it's as crazy what we're talking about today, in the fact that we did an interview recently with a guy on crypto mining, right? The idea of owning computers that go out and mine currency for the benefit of producing revenue. I mean, we're always talking about passive income.
Have we gone crazy, Russ? That's all I want to know.
Well, that's pretty crazy.
I mean, absolutely it is. And if you had asked me 3 or 4 months ago, I couldn't even spell crypto. I mean, let alone, and we actually talked about this some in the interview with Bob Burnett of Divvy Services. I had this idea that it was a magical process. Like when somebody says, I'm mining for crypto,
on the mine. I'm thinking like the 7 Dwarfs.
I had no idea what that even meant, but it sounded just foolish, to be honest with you.
I think we've mentioned on this before. We've had some conversation with some friends who've been involved in this with them. And typically on this show, we talk about stay in your lane. Don't get outside of your lane. Invest in either things you know or people that you know.
Right.
So this was an area that I felt like if we were going to go down the track, we're definitely going to invest in the people behind it. The guy you just mentioned that we were interviewing, Bob, Burnett had this background where he was a CTO for Gateway Computers. You remember Gateway, right? That was the one that had like the cow box.
Yeah. I mean, that was like, it stood out. Everybody knew the cow box.
Well, now Apple's, known for the apple, the bite out of the apple. But before Apple was really known, the cow box, everybody would see those boxes everywhere. Thankfully, Amazon doesn't put cow logos on it because my house would look like I was really running a cattle company. I'll back off that one if you know what I mean. But so the idea, though, of us putting money into something like cryptocurrency, which, be perfectly honest, I'm not a fan of cryptocurrency as
directly.
Investment.
Right.
Just for the record, I've not gone out and bought any Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero,
Ripple, whatever.
There's so many different options. I've not done that and don't plan to do that. But when we were presented with the idea of actually having machines that will produce cash, because that's really what they do.
Well, we immediately start thinking passive income.
It just made sense. It's like, okay, this is like a little mini rental house.
Yeah. And, of course, that's where my mind's going to go with my real estate background and so many of my clients in real estate. If you could buy a rental property, put in as little as, what's it, $10,000, let's say, and it starts kicking off income net of any expenses.
Say $500 a month.
Yeah. Let's say it's $500 a month. Every single month, and you don't have to get a phone call for changing out the toilet, going to put in a new AC because somebody stole the copper out of it, whatever it is.
You have to evict somebody because they're not making payments.
I immediately say, bingo, that makes sense to me.
It totally makes sense. And that, as crazy as that sounds, it's almost as crazy as having a nude man eating something out of your refrigerator. I'm thinking like, wow, this is really cool. So for us to interview Bob, and we kind of went through, and I felt it was interesting as we went through this discussion with him, and we're always talking about Willie Wall Street, right? And,
that's right.
And why?
Slick Willie Wall Street.
Slick Willie.
Okay, don't forget that part.
What is Willie trying to convince us to do? And Willie's in kin with Billy the banker. Maybe Billy's
Gary the government. I don't know that Gary. If you're named Gary, I'm sorry. That's not.
We actually know a Gary in government, don't we?
We do. But yeah, you're right. They're all kind of connected. In fact, Bob spoke to the fact that these are all connected in some way, shape, or form.
They don't want you involved in this stuff because it's really potentially going to take the control out of their hands. If you started really getting involved in the digital currency world and not using the fiat currencies that exist, that's the paper dollars that we're trading for goods and services, then you could eliminate a lot of jobs and people that get paid off of those things. There's a lot of people upset about the potential of that. And from that, I'm kind of actually an advocate of it because I wouldn't mind getting outside of the herd as it relates to that. But I will say, there's a lot of unknown in this deal. And we had Bob do a presentation to us just because I had no idea. You laugh and say you couldn't spell Bitcoin. I'd heard the word blockchain, and I'm not going to even pretend to try to explain it to you right now.
Please don't try to explain that on this.
I will give you, on the show notes, I will give you a great slide or two that comes from Bob and Divvy Services that really did an awesome job explaining the reasoning for blockchain and its purpose.
Before he explained it to me, I didn't even understand, why does cryptocurrency even exist, right? In my mind, it was kind of like this wild, wild west. It was something people were trading. It was very volatile, up and down, up and down.
Well, and it is.
It still is.
If you look at the currency part of it, so there's two sides of it. There's technology, which is blockchain, and then there's the currency that's attached to it, which the technology is here to stay. And the currency is what's going to ride this wave. Eventually, it'll stable out because as people start moving into it, you're going to start seeing more.
The technology part, I'm glad Bob kind of explained this too. The technology part that's here to stay is because it solves a problem, right? It's a solution to the issue of, hey, what happened in 2008 is banks and government, all this kind of collusion to the point that there's no transparency, nothing backing that currency, so it can be manipulated immediately.
Well, hence the reason the banks and governments and everybody else don't want you involved in this, because it takes the control out of their hands.
What's the main thing everybody's saying? It's not regulated. By the way, why did that become a negative thing?
Right.
Like regulated
How many of your businesses out there are regulated?
Yeah.
How many of them do you want to be regulated?
Exactly. But we've actually heard that enough to where we're like, oh, wait, that sounds risky because it's not regulated.
Right.
I'm sorry. Actually, that's a good thing. And we don't need to forget that.
Yeah, regulation has gotten us in a position to where now we're having to pay higher amounts of money for goods and services from companies because we needed the government to oversee that they were good.
That's right.
Like we really need to pay someone out there that we can't, as a market, determine whether they're good or bad. We could go off on a long tail here, but I will say that if you look at this internally and you start really delving into the questions I was asking as I was looking at this, is this a good place for my dollars? Am I going to look silly? Like, is this going to be one of those things I'm going to be talking about on the podcast? Like, okay, look, Joey.
Yeah, did we just lose half of our listenership here? I mean,
I just bought 10 of these mining machines. and by the way, yeah, I don't even know how to plug them up. But thankfully, they offered that part of it, so I didn't even have to worry about. I will say the funniest.
This is not going to be something you plug in your basement. Unbeknownst to me, Russ had to correct me on that. Why don't we just put that computer we're going to buy?
We put in that extra office we have. Yeah, we put in the extra office over there. I mean, it'd be fine. Like not knowing that would raise the temperature of the room like 100 degrees or something is what we've been doing.
Yeah, not a good idea. But I'm grateful that Divvy actually manages those, monitors. The power is all done through their system, their warehouses, whatever. So, yeah, we don't have to wonder about that. But another question that you and I actually talked about is like, is this like Joey's jams from the 80s? I mean, is this going to go out of style? Is it a fad that's going to be here today?
Are you trying to bring those jams back, by the way?
Well, I mean, it's not summertime yet, but just know I
saw you kicking some plaid the other day. Let's be real. You got your kangaroo with the zip up pockets on the side.
So we may end up bringing some of those fads back, but that's the real question people wonder: is this going to just boom and bust?
And it could. There's definitely a lot of speculation in the currency itself. And when we were interviewing Bob and we're talking to him about his background, one, he was a CTO for Gateway. Pretty solid. The guy understood how to build a computer pretty well. Yeah. Knew how to market it very well. He left Gateway with a pretty good chunk of change and then created another business that he then turned around and sold to another huge business out there, Proxy Bid.
That's right.
Then started managing that deal and then did a management buyout and started Divvy. And then off the side of that have created this whole Divvy services, Divvy solutions, where they are now creating computers that mine. And it's just,
which isn't their only business. It's just one thing
a fragment.
That's something that they've added and they started realizing, hey, this is a need.
Which, by the way, I want to make sure we do a disclaimer. We're not telling you to go out and buy mining computers from this company. I just want to be clear when we talk about different things in here. If we're not as honest as we possibly can with what we're doing with our money, it'd be hard for you guys to trust us.
That's right.
And I will tell you, if this fails, I'm going to be the first one that comes back on here, makes fun of myself for doing something. One of the purposes, I guess, behind us putting money into this and following this was just because of our friend Jim and our friend Bob, who now we understand like their expertise in this area. But I'm totally not someone who understands how this whole mining process works, even though now I have mined, or my workers, if that's what they call them, my workers have mined, and I own these coins. Which, by the way, think about that. Like now owning a coin is now become popular again.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, in fact, just last night, I'm putting down my 3-year-old Adler, and she's about as cute as she can be. Oh. She's laying in the bed and she holds out her hand to me right before she goes to bed. And she's like, Dad, can you put my money on the side table? She's like, of course she said it in a 3-year-old term. I'm not going to try to, recreate that, but holds out her little hand. And she's got a little penny in her hand. She wants her monies and she wants me to put it right there next to her bed so she can put in her pig bank. That's what she said, my pig bank. But yeah, so having that coin to her,
that was a big deal.
Oh, it's huge.
Well, I did a video, my Friday Freedom series, on needing the tax. And my uncle, he gave me a $5 bill. And he's like, here, this is for my birthday. I don't remember how old I was, 6, 7, 8 years old. And he gives me the $5 bill, and I look him up square in the eyes. I'm like, what about the tax? He reaches in his pocket, because back in those days, like
You always had coins.
Oh, he had a pocket full of coins. He pulled it out and like dumped. I mean, it's probably like $4.60, and it was just made up of every denomination you can think of. Well, that was huge for a kid back in those days. Well, now, I mean, you drop a coin on the ground walking out of the grocery store because you happen to pay for it in cash, which is rare. I mean, because who pays with cash anymore? You drop a coin on the ground and it goes rolling off. I'm not chasing that thing.
It costs you more to stop and get it. You know?
I'm not chasing that thing. But now you drop a Bitcoin, you drop a Ethereum coin or whatever, you chase that thing around the block. My wife is always saying, what are these coins you talking about? I want to see them. I don't see any coins. I'm like, no, it's fictional in the fact that it's not truly a coin. And then she's like, well, why can't I just make up my own money? Why can't I just call it Megan's?
Oh.
I'm like, you have your own money. It's called Amazon Prime. Yeah. I don't know if I told you, like, we trade in cardboard around our house.
Oh, that's a regular
going back to the 80s. The amount of boxes that come through my house, like I could have a block party. We'd be out breakdancing like nobody's business. You remember that, don't you? Like
on the cardboard?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The cardboard. Like you'd have a fight on it first, like have your own little boxing ring. And the next thing you know, you're doing breakdancing out there on the cardboard.
Y'all, this is crazy. Russ is actually doing some breakdancing on the floor of our podcast room right now, and it is unbelievable. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, if I was on the floor,
we'd be in the hospital right now.
I would be like that scene from The Office whenever Andy's doing the dances in the thing and he goes down for the splits. Woo. Yeah, that would be me, not coming back from that.
Well, and Russ, as you mentioned, we always want to just share our story. What are we learning? Again, right, wrong, and different. We're going to share. We're always agreeing to share our wins and our losses so that you can be educated along with us. Well, and that's really where this started, right?
Well, and there's going to be a blog that we're going to write off of this because Bob gave us so much great content, and I wish that we could have aired the whole interview, but unfortunately with audio, it didn't work out. So I want to take a lot of the content he has and put it into a blog format. Because please don't take our word on what cryptocurrency is and how it completely works, because that's not what this episode completely is about. But we do want to give you opportunity to learn about that sort of stuff. If you're interested, of course, there's YouTube videos all over the place. But you got to start with education. You got to start learning about it. And we keep coming back to that. And even Bob mentions in the podcast that we did with him about how they do weekly, monthly webinars teaching people about blockchain, how that stuff works. And that's what you and I did, right? We just sat here right in our office and started listening to him talk about it. And that's when I remember I shared this with you and you gave me a confused look the first time I talked to you about it.
Yep. Like what is it? A cow looking at a new gate? Is that right?
A cow looking at a new gate. I looked over to you and he explained what blockchain was and how it operates, and it like the light bulb was on the top of your head.
It made sense finally, yeah. And again, I think there's a lot of perception, especially for all of us. We're busy, we're business owners, we're constantly moving around, and we're hearing little bits and pieces of media about this and that about crypto, but I'd never stopped to understand it. And so he did a fantastic job of explaining that.
And for me, when I listened to him talk about the fact that he even said he felt like the currency itself was potentially a bad investment. It was,
right, to buy it directly.
To just go out and buy that currency directly.
Super risky.
So if you're doing that, just know that you're gambling in that. Not that it can't pay off, but I think there's too many people right now. We had an episode a couple back when we were talking about that dopamine chemical being fired off in our body, and it's so attached to gambling. I think people are seeing that with this currency. They're like, oh, I can put $1,000 in. This thing could be worth $1 million.
Oh,
it could blow up. It might. I mean, it's as good as going down to Florida and buying, 1 million lottery tickets, I guess, too, or 1,000 lottery tickets. It could work out. It's not super likely. But when he started explaining actually owning the computers creating value for a network, you're getting paid in that currency, but I can trade that currency into US dollars.
That's right.
It may be worth more or less when I trade it, but it's creating value. I see that as a true idea.
Okay, so just to kind of shed a little bit extra light again, I want you to spend time with people that know way more than this, but I'll just give you my quick synopsis of that. Your computer is essentially being rented almost by the community of, let's say, Ethereum or Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency that you're mining. They're utilizing the inner workings of that computer to validate transactions. So it's no different than your bank having, verified the transaction all around. They're getting paid for that service.
Well, it's just, most of you guys have businesses that probably sell stuff, and you probably have one of those credit card processors right there in your office.
Right.
And when a customer swipes a credit card and buys something from your business, you pay a percentage, say 1.9 to Visa, MasterCard. It's like 3% to American Express, whatever these numbers are. That's exactly what's in essence happening by these computers, except there's not a centralized data source processing center like all of those are going back to.
Right.
Because it's centralized. I mean, that somebody can fudge the numbers. And as he explained in his interview with us, it's the idea whenever you look at your bank statement, sometimes you have deposit coming in, you see your available balance and your ledger balance, and those are different.
Yes.
Because you have money in flux. There's money transferring. Well, that doesn't happen in the digital world. It happens automatically.
And so they have to utilize these computers. So you're essentially offering your computer up as a service. So that's why you're being able to get paid.
You look so smart right now explaining this.
It's the glasses. But really, that made so much sense to me. Again, my idea of what mining was some kid in his basement playing around, and like doing something that was kind of shisty and weird,
Like back in the day when you're playing D&D?
Yeah. Don't get me started on Stranger Things. Have you seen that yet?
What?
Stranger Things? Oh, Netflix? Yeah, don't. Okay, that's for a different podcast, but it's all about 80s and D&D and all this kind of stuff. Dungeons and Dragons.
I never got into that stuff, man.
Me neither.
Like people had like Ouija boards. They're playing D&D. I'm like, come on, let's just take a baseball bat to a G.I. Joe. Let's just see how far this thing will fly. I mean, that was the kind of stuff I was doing.
So anyway, I mean, I know we've gone off on some side rails here, but the main things we walked away from that interview is he also is very bullish about the future of this, right? He sees this as a way that really the rest of the world could be able to benefit from this technology. And so that's why we're very bullish on this, lasting.
Well, before I ever heard anything about this from them, my brother-in-law, who's an orthopedic surgeon, and I were talking, and he was sharing stuff with me as he usually does. And I don't understand all of it because, he speaks at a much higher intelligence level than I receive. But he did start talking about blockchain. I was like, all right, well, explain this to me. And how do you see this working? He started talking about from a medical side and records. He's like, it's a game changer because when you go to a doctor's office, they have to send your records to another specialist.
Like
you go to another, physically sending this stuff because they're all using different processing systems. They're using different places to house the data. Have you ever had a parent? I know my dad takes all sort of different medications. And what he ends up finding out over time is that one of the medications he's taking is counteracting the other medication he's taking from another doctor. Well, it's hard for those physicians to keep records on what someone else is doing or not doing. And they come back and you don't know that all of a sudden they may not have been allergic to the drug that you're prescribing because their medical history says no. But then another doctor had prescribed a drug to them and that created an allergic reaction they didn't even know existed. Well, if you don't know that specific thing, you could give them a drug that could have implications. He says blockchain is going to allow that ledger, which is basically just like this long Google document, if you want to simplify it in my terms, that is going to allow physicians to be able to keep records to everything. So I do think that being bullish on the technology, which is why, again, we're not trying to give you investment advice. Please don't take our word for this until after it's worked for a while at least. But, the technology behind the blockchain is where I think that there's reasons why us putting money in this thing has some value.
Yeah, so hopefully today has just been a great entree into this idea. It'll push you to educate yourself. It'll give you another possible way to create passive income so that you can have more passive income than it is monthly expenses, right, to get to financial freedom.
And what's the worst thing that's going to happen with this, Joey?
Well, worst thing is we bought some really expensive computers that are worth less than what we bought them
and
for.
I'm going to be selling them to the guys that own Stranger Things that want to, from what I understand, the graphics card in these things can like roll.
Turn it into gold.
Like a gamer. A gamer can just fall in love with this thing. I've got something I can sell.
Maybe on Craigslist before you know it. But
and by the way, the fact that the guy who is doing this owns like 2,000 of them, yeah, he feels confident that we can sell them if it all goes bad. I'm good on that too. But yeah, if you are going to do this, like, don't try to do it in your basement, because from what I understand, that one of the guys did this up in South Dakota, and it was like 3 degrees outside. He put like 10 of them in a warehouse, and it was like 125 degrees inside the warehouse.
yeah,
It was not.
that doesn't work out well.
It's not a good idea.
All right, so thank you for listening today. Hopefully this is helpful, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand, so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.